Great, thank you. So welcome everyone to the seminar series at the University of San Francisco. Seminar series is sponsored by the Data Institute. Our speaker today is Melanie Palmer. She's an MSDS alum who graduated in 2017. Her practicum was with the San Francisco 49ers, and afterwards she went to work with NBCUniversal and T-Mobile as a senior data scientist. Currently, she's at SoFi Stadium in Hollywood Park as a data science manager. And today she's going to be talking to us about leveraging data for real-time event support. So can we give Melanie a round of applause? Thank you. Okay, Melanie, go ahead and take it away.
Sounds good. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to talk here today, especially having been in your shoes not too long ago. So it's exciting to be back. But yeah, so I wanted to talk to you today about how we are using data forecasting and modeling in real time at SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park to help with more strategic decision making and just better operational efficiency in general. So brief overview, I think I'll just start with who we are as SoFi Stadium and then walk through kind of what our projects look like, the data cycle, and then the reporting and forecasting part of it. And then just a few other ways that we use data throughout the stadium as well. So who we are, I think people hear SoFi Stadium, they know exactly what it is, but a lot of people don't know that SoFi Stadium actually sits on Hollywood Park, which is 298 acres of space in Inglewood, California. And it's made up of SoFi Stadium, but also YouTube theater and a retail district, movie theater, and some residential spaces. So SoFi Stadium is kind of like the crown jewel of Hollywood Park. Some say we're the home to Los Angeles Rams, the Los Angeles Chargers. We host a number of marquee events every year. Some of the big name ones, Super Bowl in 2022, we hosted the college football playoff this year. And then we will host the World Cup and the opening and closing ceremonies for the Olympics, as well as numerous other concerts throughout the year. So upcoming, we have Taylor Swift, we have Beyonce. Very exciting from that standpoint. But besides SoFi Stadium, we also have YouTube Theater. We get all the data for that as well. So if you can kind of see on the overhead image of SoFi Stadium here, the point to the left of the screen is kind of like a teardrop. The point is actually YouTube Theater. It's a 6,000 seat theater that hosts a variety of shows every year, between kind of 70 and 95 shows, depending on the year. We have concerts, we have comedy shows, book tours, all sorts of different events come through there. And then the rest of the property, like I said, it's 298 acres. On the southern end, we have a retail district that will be opening this year. It'll have a movie theater. We're building out a hotel, residential spaces, and park areas. So we have, aside from the big games and big shows at SoFi Stadium, we actually have data flowing in from our property year round, which makes it even more exciting from a data science forecasting modeling perspective, because we don't just have a set number of shows. We have data from people that are coming to the retail district or going to YouTube Theater or even parking on our property for other events. So we have the Kia Forum just to the north of us, and we will in the future have the Intuit Dome, where the Los Angeles Clippers will play right to the southwest. So it's sort of turning into kind of a entertainment hub in Los Angeles. And then who we are as a team, I sit on the strategy and analytics team, which I joined around 16 months ago. And at that time, it was just our VP of strategy and analytics, our director, myself, and our manager of analytics. So we have basically doubled the size of our team in a year. We're growing quickly. And with that, it means there's lots of opportunity to use data in the sports and entertainment space. So what does our data look like? Because we have so much data from different sources, or so many different events going on, we have lots of data from different sources. So anything that's in a large blue box is actually what we get in real time. So we have APIs with Ticketmaster, with Square, with Park Hub, which is all of our parking data, and then 247, which is any sort of incident that occurs on event day. So be it a flowing trash can or fans that get into a fight, that flows through 247. All of that updates in real time during events. So we are able to hit the APIs every minute for most of them, 30 seconds for Ticketmaster to pull in the data in real time. All of this, as you can see, we have a contract with Google. So all of our tools, for the most part, are Google products. So all of our data is stored in GCP, which is the Google version of AWS. We use BigQuery for any sort of like SQL. Our reporting is through Looker, and then all of our modeling is either done in Google's Colab or through Databricks, which is a Google Marketplace product. And then this is just kind of an overview of how we use the data, especially on my team, the data science team. Our main focus really is to understand the completely understand the customer value to us. So for a lot of our shows, obviously Rams and Chargers games are a bit different because you have season ticket holders and avid fans, but for a lot of the concerts and other marquee events that flow through SoFi Stadium, we get anywhere between 90 to 95% of the attendees are first-time attendees. And so if we know that most people are coming for the first time and maybe the only time, how do we maximize the value from them? But then also, how can we use this to figure out how to get people back? So kind of the main part of this is the live event reporting. So what happens live? I'll get into this a little bit later, but we have data flowing through reports and an app that says, what is happening in real time, be it how many people are scanning into the building, what are they buying, where are they parking, what incidents are occurring, all real time. And then also, how does this compare to not only what has happened historically, but also what we are expecting in the future, so we can make decisions in real time. After the event, we go through an entire survey process where we send a survey out to the guests that came. We do a deep analysis of the survey results so that we can kind of understand pain points, recap the live events, and moving forward, how can we make changes based on what we're hearing from the surveys. ET did a wonderful sentiment analysis project for us this year to help us actually start to understand the verbatim write-in text as well. Another part of how we use the data is customer segmentation. So how can we define the distinct customer segments who are attending our events? Because different customer segments have different needs, have different pain points and different behaviors. So how can we understand who is coming to our property? And then once we understand who is coming, how can we get them to come back? So how can we understand the propensity of guests to attend based on what we know of them, both on where they fall in the customer segmentation, but also on their past behavior. Justin helped us with this year. We're putting that model into production. So that is very exciting. This will help with our marketing teams, optimize their email campaigns, promotional offers, etc. Once we know who's going to come, we can set dynamic pricing to make sure that if we aren't pricing people out who want to come, but we are still ensuring that we're going to get those revenue streams that we need. And then all of this leads back to event preparation and the forecasting piece of it. So we know what events are coming up. How can we help other teams prepare for it based on what our forecasts are, be that in attendance, both in numbers, but also who will show up, how much revenue can we expect, parking, all of that. So both from an operational and a revenue standpoint, how can we prepare for the events coming up? And then we get back to the live event and we do it all again. So I think getting more into the event forecasting and real-time reporting, this is something that we started last year for the NFL season. Like I said, our team was very new last year. So all of this is pretty recent developments, and we're working to roll this out in real time as we move forward. So we have a whole NFL season that we've been able to test on now. and a whole concert season. We're moving into our next event season currently. So we'll continue to iterate on that moving forward. But at a high level, we model kind of forecast 3 different buckets. So we have our attendance bucket, our revenue bucket, and our parking bucket. These are both from an operational standpoint and then overall business standpoint, kind of the 3 areas of focus that we have. So I'm going to walk you through specifically for the NFL what we did. But for the most part, this is very similar to the process that we use for non-NFL events. So this would be the concerts or the WrestleManias of the world. Within attendance, we have forecast attendance with and without suites. Our suites team specifically requested that so they know how they're doing on their suite sales. We forecast show rate, which is the number of people who actually showed up divided by the number of people that bought a ticket. For NFL games, this is anywhere between 80 and 85% on average. For concerts, it's very variable depending on the show. And then also scans per gate. So there's 12 different entrances at SoFi Stadium, and we forecast how many scans that we predict at each gate, so that from an operational standpoint, we know how many scanners, how many employees we need at any given gate. Some important variables that go into this specifically for NFL, they're kind of consistent across the board, but like, what week of the NFL is it? If it's preseason, probably not as much attendance as if it's a postseason playoff game against a rival. Again, opponent conference. We couldn't do actual opponent in the model this past year because it made it too noisy with only 1 year of data previously. Now that we have 2 seasons, it's easier to say, yes, if the Raiders or the Cowboys are coming, it's going to be more well-attended game than other teams. And then also the day of week. The day of week is also correlated to traffic. We haven't quite figured out how to model traffic, but that's one thing that we've really seen with that. On the revenue side, this is particularly or specifically related to food and beverage. So we forecast total revenue, transaction count, per cap spend, so how much each person is spending. And then also not included in this list here, but we have, since I made these slides a while ago, built out forecasts for number of transactions by level and by point of sale. So again, this is helpful for our concessions team to know, based on historical, where we are expecting the most sales, be it level or point of sale, so that we're well stocked. What we've noticed from just observations as we walk around events sometimes is that there will be one food and beverage stand that is just overwhelmed with customers, whether it be for what they sell there or just the convenience of the location. And then at other locations, you'll have employees just kind of standing around waving their get food here paddle, and there's no one around to get food. So how can we use this data to be more strategic and help the concession team know, like, hey, we actually need more people on level 6 than we need on level 2. This is the first one where temperature at kickoff really played into per cap spend and transaction count. So on days when it is incredibly hot, which does happen in the early part of the season, SoFi Stadium is not a climate controlled stadium. It's open air with a cover. So if it's hot outside, it is hot in the stadium. And on days when it's hot, our beverage sales increase significantly, which then drives up our revenue and transaction counts. And then the last one is parking. This is mostly all operational, so that our parking team knows where people are going to park. We have several different lots, so making sure that we're strategically sourced on where the staff is. Expected failed scans is in there because that's time spent. So if your parking scan fails and they have to rescan it a few times, then that's time that someone else would be coming into the parking lot. And then also what's not included on this list, but another forecast that we have is how many cars will be parked, of the total cars will be parked an hour before the show, or in this case, the game start, and then at kickoff time. So this will helps, basically it's an arrival curve. So like, when will people be arriving? Again, to help with staffing and then also just overall parking expectations. This also helps with the parking team knowing when to flip over to the exit route. So the way you come into the stadium is typically different than the way you exit the stadium. And this helps with that. How our forecast pipeline works, it's a little bit messy, but we are working on it as we speak. Like I said, we are a small, quickly growing team. A lot of this was built just to get it done from a pipeline standpoint prior to the season start. And then we're using this off season to really refine how everything works. So currently, as it stands, data is pulled from GCP into BigQuery, where we clean and model the data, send that into Colab for any sort of model building. Colab is essentially a Jupyter notebook. And then you can push that data with the actual forecast back into BigQuery, which feeds into Looker. Looker is Google's version of Tableau. From there, the predictions or forecasts are fed into a specific forecasting dashboard, but then also they feed into our real-time reporting so that anyone that's using the reports knows what our expectations are. My analyst, Emily, she's been wonderful in kind of revamping not only how the forecasts are actually built, but then also this pipeline in general, and converting it all, taking most of it out of Colab, putting it in BigQuery functions so that we can actually just run it internally in BigQuery and save a lot of time and effort with that. So our modeling results, I don't have a specific slide on this, but the model, what's great about the data is that it's like very straightforward. A lot of it is linear. Attendance goes up, revenue goes up. So I think as basic as it sounds, most of our modeling right now is just in linear regression, super simple. It makes it easier from a business standpoint, being able to share it out into the world, into our executives or anyone else, just very easy to explain. We played with some more complex modeling. Emily is very interested in neural networks, stuff like that. But none of it, I mean, as you can see, like we were very, very close with our predictions. And because of that, we decided to just keep things simple. Obviously, there's always room for improvement, but I think a lot of it too is as we get more data, this variability will calm down. All of our models were built just on, initially just built on 1 year of NFL data, but then moving forward, we obviously added in the games as we went. So we were getting smarter and smarter as we went. And because the linear regression models work so well, we decided to just roll with them. We are also currently in the process of building out minute by minute forecasts throughout the event. So as you can see, all of these metrics are just high level, attendance at the end of the night, parking scans at the end of the night, all end of the night metrics. But where we're moving into next season is having these update in real time too. So based on how many people have scanned in at a given point, updating the end of night prediction based on that. So we definitely have some work to do, but I think for the first season, we're very happy with it. So then how it's used, a lot of it feeds into our command center report. So this is not the best picture, but we it's essentially, we call it the command center, and it's where our operations team, our engineering team, parking, fire, police, all sorts of essentially the game day operations staff. They have, this is just one small wall of TVs, but they have a whole other giant wall that has cameras of everything. This is essentially their hub. So they know exactly what's going, if you're in this room, you can tell exactly what's going on in the stadium at all times. And so our forecasts, along with our live event reporting feeds that I touched on earlier, we built out dashboards, and we sort of just told the teams and said, hey, we're taking 2 of your screens. And so we have our own reporting up there to take that. Really, it was a big win for us because it replaced the partner dashboards that were up there. So Ticketmaster has its own internal dashboard, and Square has its own internal dashboard. And we essentially replaced those with our own internal reporting so we can create views and visualizations that are helpful to our team beyond just what is offered natively within Ticketmaster. We're also able to consolidate all of the real-time reporting into a central location. So all you have to do is look at these 2 screens, and you know ticketing, parking, revenue, and event incidents all in one place. We increased the update time for all of our API polls. Prior to the NFL season, we were hitting the APIs every 5 to 10 minutes, which seems fast if you're thinking of an API, but in terms of real-time events, lots of things can happen between 5 and 10 minutes, and you can miss something big if you're not updating in real time. And then beyond that, because of our reporting, it's led to real-time changes that are based off of the insights that the reports provide and the forecast. So we can say we're trending way below in parking. We need to see what's up. Then Juan, our parking director, can hop in this little golf cart and go out and see, is there just a huge backup in one lot? Do we need to reroute people? So driving real-time change there. Same thing if we see that parking or ticket scans are really low at gate 8 and gate 9, which are usually our 2 most frequently entered gates. We can, actually go say what is going on. So here's an overview of some of our reporting. So we have, the one dashboard is the ticketing and parking. We have the actual attendance, the expected attendance, average scans per minute. That's an efficiency metric for how quickly we're getting people into the building, how many cars were parked, parking success rate. And then as you can see, we have attendance by entry. You can measure scans per lot. And then also the parking scan comparison, which is how we compare to other similar events. Are we trending like normal? We've built out the same one for ticketing that we'll be launching for this NFL season. So same thing. Are we trending normal? And then we will also add in a line that says where we expect to be at the end of the night. And then, like I said, there's the 247 instance, and this is everything from, fan conduct to things spilling. We need restocks. I believe this was the Raiders game, which is why there's so many fan conduct incidents here. But you can look over time by department, and this replaced essentially what was an Excel sheet that they were using previously. So what is next for us here? Kind of the big goals are to optimize revenue streams, but then also to identify levers that we can pull to just create a better overall fan experience. So for the 247 data say, if we can get on it in real time that things need restocking, then people aren't going to be complaining that there's no toilet paper. Or if we can make a quick adjustment because some of the ticket scanners aren't working at gate 8 or gate 9, then we can get people in the building faster. So this also goes pre-event too. So if we know that a certain demographic is coming, then we can give them tailored pre-event communication. So if we know there's a segment of fans, for instance, the Billy Joel concert was sort of an older demographic. And so if we can cater our pre-event communication to them, get them to the stadium earlier, that also gives them a better experience because they don't have to worry about showing up late to the concert, but it helps us because then they have more time to buy food and beverage once they're in the building. And then again, based on where we know where they're coming from, we can be strategic with where we place our scanners, so we can relieve some of that entry congestion, both in parking and entering the stadium. So again, it's a revenue driver, but also create a better fan experience. And then also, like I said, we have other venues. So we're working on scaling this to YouTube Theater. So those are smaller shows, but that doesn't mean we care any less about the fan experience there. So that is one thing that Emily has been working on, is scaling it out to YouTube Theater. And then eventually, once the district opens, then we'll have all that retail activity too. So figuring out how we can create the best experience for our visitors there. And then a few of the ways that we're going to go about it. So I touched on the real-time trending forecast. So that will look really into where we're at currently compared to where we expect to be at that given time. And then also at the end of the night too. Getting deeper into our forecast by gate, we have those, but looking at the arrival curve by gate and time. So how many people we expect to enter at, gate 8 or 9, an hour before the show, 30 minutes before the show, etc. And then the Evolve scanners are the cool little scanners that you just walk through. You don't have to take anything out of your bag or anything. And then looking at the arrival curve for specific parking lots based on where they're coming from. So this is data we recently got, which is just, where the ticket buyers live. So are they coming from the north, the south? And then we can control, the traffic flows that way. So beyond just the forecasting, like I mentioned earlier, we have kind of that whole cycle of data strategy on our team. Some other ways that we use the data right now, we're in a big push for different segmentation work. So looking at our fans and being able to tell, who they are, identify them beyond just, Ticketmaster account ID or email address, to see who they are in order to make more informed operational and marketing decisions. This was our first pass at it, where we just did personas for concert attendees and identified several different groups. This is just an example here, but we're on a big initiative right now that is just wrapping up, where we're actually looking more into Hollywood Park as a whole, as opposed to just SoFi Stadium. So creating fan segments that include people who just go to the retail district to shop and have dinner, the fans that come for games, the fans that, go to YouTube Theater. And that's been a really fun initiative to work on because it's a mix of qualitative and quantitative data. So the qualitative side, getting kind of the psychographic behavior of people who have and have not attended events at SoFi Stadium. And then we just sent out the quantitative survey to kind of back up our findings for that. But the fan segmentation stuff is very important, just from actually for all the departments in our company. So from marketing, making sure that they're marketing correctly based on who we expect to come. For operations, understanding what the guests are going to be like. We know that there are some fan segments that have a much higher propensity to purchase alcohol. So making sure that we have enough bartenders, or if we have an event where most of the fans are going to be younger, then, it's like, we know there's going to be higher sales, things like popcorn and hot dogs, and just making sure that we're fully stocked from an operational standpoint there. And then from a sales side too, so understanding, like, once we know who we're marketing, then from a sales side, like, who are we targeting for suites? Are we making sure that we're selling our tickets at the correct price? Make sure we're not pricing out different demographics or different segments based on who we expect to attend. And then just some cool output from, like, the fan surveys. A big driver of fan experience is sound quality, less so for NFL games. those are just loud. But from a concert standpoint specifically, is making sure that we have good sound quality. So most artists that come through SoFi Stadium use our internal sound system. They bring some of their own speakers around the stage, but a lot of it is filtered through our own, through our system. And so figuring out, when we get our surveys back, people rating the sound, we've noticed there's a strong correlation between between a sound quality rating and that attendee's likelihood to return. So we use this data to work with our broadcast and engineering teams to make sure that the sound quality is good throughout the stadium and that there aren't any misses based on, where a speaker is placed or how the stage is set up, and all of that. So that's just kind of another example of how we're using the data at SoFi Stadium. I could talk for hours about how we're using the data because we are the only strategy team in the company. So we work with all of the different departments. So, any sort of ad hoc you can think of, we've probably done it. But this is, I think, one of my favorite use cases for it. So I kind of just flew through that, but that's essentially an overview of how we're using our data to help with the fan experience at SoFi Stadium and Hollywood Park as a whole. I know I didn't get too technical. I had to give a similar talk recently where they requested it not to be technical. So if you have any more technical questions, happy to answer those, but any questions in general, happy to answer as well.
Okay, now we're going to enter the Q&A session. For the students who joined a little bit later, after Melanie's talk, we also have James Reisman from AI Housing. So please stick around for that. Now for the Q&A, if you can use either this microphone or this microphone on the side, if you have a question for Melanie, please stand now. So we have one question coming up, and then I have questions as well. Go ahead. Hi.
Hello. Hi, Melanie. I just have a question regarding the persona of fans that you create. How do you know what kind of fans they are? Like, how do you know they are like hip-hop fans?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for this specific example, these concert attendee personas were the result of modeling on our internal database. So we have, in addition to the Ticketmaster data, we also have, it's called live analytics, and that's essentially the fan demographic data. So from Ticketmaster, we get all of the certain attendees, we get all of their behavior. So we know what they've bought tickets to, we know what shows they've attended, where they've attended, all of that. And then with the live analytics, which we can match to the Ticketmaster data, we have, I believe it's all output of surveys, but they have a propensity to, like, propensity scores within the data. So, so if I was, for my account, it would say like, oh, she bought tickets to Taylor Swift and a Rams game. And she also has a high propensity to purchase tickets for the Ed Sheeran show or to attend a basketball game. So it has I would probably say hundreds of different propensity scores with propensities to do certain things. So that's kind of where we know. So one, it's a combination of what they've already attended and then also what they have a high propensity to attend in the future. With the work that we're doing now that we're just entering the final phase, we worked with this external consulting team to identify one, kind of the gaps in the knowledge of us at SoFi Stadium. So, what are we missing when it comes to identifying who our customers are? And then they went out and interviewed a sampling of people, some people who have attended SoFi Stadium and live in the LA area, people who have not ever been to anything on Hollywood Park but live in the area, so kind of community members, and then people who have attended events but live outside. So they traveled to SoFi Stadium from maybe the East Coast, maybe Pacific Northwest, whatever. They traveled specifically to come to YouTube Theater or in SoFi Stadium. And so from that qualitative output, we got some sort of differentiating factors that we then use to build out a quantitative survey that people will work through. We're sending it out later this week, and that has a lot of behavior type questions. There's a conjoint analysis within the survey to figure out what people like to attend, like kind of what is the ideal makeup of when they go to a concert or when they go to a sporting event. And so we'll use all of that to kind of understand like what type of fan or what type of visitor our guests are. And then once we have the different personas and kind of the key differentiating factors, we'll be able to map that back to our internal database to see what groups exist within our database. Hopefully that helped answer your question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Do you have another question? Is there anyone else? Does anyone else have a question? Yeah, go ahead and use that one.
Hello. So my question is regarding the revenue forecasting module. You mentioned that you use attendance as a feature. So I was just wondering, how do you estimate the attendance to produce that forecast? Because from what I've experienced is that you shouldn't be using estimated features. Or my point is you can use features such as day of the week, temperature, for which you have accurate forecast, external regressors. But how do you calculate the attendance to produce a forecast?
Yeah, so we've played around with doing a few different things. So we have, like you said, it's not great to use an estimate to estimate something else, because then you just kind of get down this rabbit hole of estimation. So I have attendance listed on there, but what it actually is we do know the number of tickets distributed. So we use that with kind of a factor for what type of event it is that plays into like what the expected show rate will be. So it's still a little bit of an estimate, but it's a more solid number because we can say for a given game, we know that we've distributed 65,000 tickets or we've distributed 62 or whatever. So we use that as our number for the revenue as opposed to actually just using an estimate. Did that kind of clear it up? So it's still kind of an estimate, just because we do factor in the expected show rate, but it's less so than feeding a forecast into another forecast.
Thank you. The student says that does answer the question.
Great.
Any more questions from students or from anyone visiting? So I had a question for you about features as well. So it looked like you had a number of them, and I was just wondering, were there any that you initially thought, oh, this is probably important or useful, and it ended up not being so? And then maybe if there are reasons for that? Yeah,
that's a great question. There definitely were. So we thought that, the one I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but was like who the actual opponent is. We thought that would be a very important feature. But turns out it just added a ton of noise because most visiting teams had only played once at SoFi Stadium. There were a handful that had come twice, but even then, didn't really impact it. I'm trying to think. There was definitely some other ones for not specifically for NFL games, but for concerts, we really thought that the type of show would matter. So like the type of concert. So, what is the genre of the artist or something like that. And that surprisingly didn't affect it as much because we do a pretty good job of just, I think we still have the newness factor for the stadium. So I'm curious if this will change a few years down the road. But right now, most of our concerts, we do end up selling basically all of the tickets. And so I think that, so for now, you know, the genre, it didn't matter if it was, you know, a rock concert or, you know, a Latin band or country or whatever. All of it was just kind of had no impact. The one exception to that was when BTS came, and our attendance was wild. So aside from BTS, the genre didn't matter, which was a little bit surprising. And then the other one for attendance, it was attendance specifically, was we thought that there might be, we tried a couple different interaction terms, and we really thought that the NFL week and the opponent's conference would matter. So if we're certain that if it was an in-conference game at the end of the season, meaning, you know, it has more impact on whether or not that team would make the playoffs or something like that, that had no impact on the model. So it was more so a lot of the interaction terms that were like, oh yeah, we're like the kickoff time and the day of week. We're like, that is definitely going to be important. It's like, nope, it's not. So there were definitely some of that.
Thank you very much. Do we have any last questions from the audience? Okay, so we're going to wrap it up there. Thank you so much, Melanie. Can we give Melanie a round of applause?
Thank you all.
Thank you so much. And we will have our next seminar series occurring again in August. So please be sure to see our meetup group. Thank you. We're going to end here, and then James Reisman will give us a small talk.